It's so easy to fall in love with this world. Of course, normally, naturally, we think of the natural world, and there is so much to fall in love with, so much to adore. Brilliant springtime skies. Every September, I admire September's pink explosion of azaleas right outside my home study window. You can check it out as you're leaving this morning, just next door. The sheer variety of leaves which are now budding. I sometimes pinch myself. God could have decided that every leaf would be identical to every other leaf, but he didn't. That's not the design. And the other day I was standing out on our back deck and I thought, I'll do a quick scan around. How many different types of leaves can I spot just standing in this spot? And 1, 2, 3, 4, oh, there's another one, 5. I got 26 different types of leaves. Such variety of colours and shapes and shades and sizes and textures and patterns just of the leaves. There is so much to adore in our natural world, but when I say it's so easy to fall in love with our world, I'm not just talking about the natural world. Also, it's very easy to gush with pleasure over the artificial world, the man-made world. And you might ask, in the man-made world, what is it that sparks a certain kind of joy? Well, there's the BMWs that I've admired ever since I was 11 years old and still have never yet driven. There's the gleaming curves of city skyscrapers. There's exquisite Adora handmade chocolates just down the street. There's the towering mark that wins the game right on the siren. There's the imagination that produces a Rubik's Cube. There's the craftsmanship in a Steinway Grand. There's the elegance of a Chanel fragrance. There is so much to adore, so much to gush with pleasure, and we really do easily fall in love with it all. And why is that? Well, what's going on there is that we ourselves are made in God's image, and when we create using what he originally created out of nothing, in a way we're just doing what he designed us to do, like him. It's good, it's beautiful, it's lovable, and so much of what we create seems so admirable. To imagine it all coming to an end feels, well, tragic. To know that a calamitous final judgment is coming and nothing and no one will escape rightly brings an overwhelming sadness, a haunting heartache. I think it's no wonder that Revelation 18 contains such intense, lengthy laments, plus a summons, a direct summons to all who belong to Christ. Because the fundamental problem is so much that seems so good is inextricably entangled with evil. It's all tangled up with evil. And if God is to eradicate evil so that the world can be made new, so much that we admire is doomed to fall. We met Lady Babylon last week, the most unholy of women, the proudest of earthly cities, the great power behind all earthly empires set up in defiance of God. We saw in Revelation 17 the powers of commerce and the powers of the state allied together and seeking to squash, seeking to obliterate any true knowledge of God. And how does that happen? Lady Babylon seduces. Lady Babylon intoxicates. Lady Babylon touches every land and every heart. Lady Babylon herself becomes intoxicated on the blood of God's faithful people. Her great goal is to dethrone Jesus. That's what we saw last week. Her great goal is to dethrone Jesus, and to seek to dethrone Jesus is the very heart of evil. And I commented last week the way intoxication works is the more you drink what Lady Babylon offers, the less you can resist her. And the more you drink what Lady Babylon offers, the more numb you become towards God. These are not fun chapters to chew on together, but they're so necessary. And well, where does the vision now turn? Chapter 18, verse 1. After this I saw another angel coming down from heaven. He had great authority, and part of me, when I read something like that, I go, how can John tell? Does he have a big sign over his head, great authority, or is there a rumbling soundtrack, or Thor's hammer in his hand, or what is it? How can he tell? It's by his dazzling splendour, reflecting the glory of God in heaven's throne room where he's just left. This angel had great authority, and the earth was illuminated by his splendour. With a mighty voice he shouted, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a home for demons and a haunt for every evil spirit, a haunt for every unclean and detestable bird," which is not just picturing those occasional cyclist-hating magpies, which, yes, I detest. It's something like foul vultures and shape-shifting ravens. And they're moving in next door to unclean spirits and dread demons. And once that happens, disaster is imminent. Lady Babylon's doom is certain. Why? Verse 3, "For all the nations have drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries." All nations, that includes the ancient Incas. That includes the medieval Ottomans. That includes modern China. All nations. Verse 3 continues, "The kings of the earth," and that includes mining tycoons and media magnates. It includes tech entrepreneurs and military commanders. It includes CEOs and dictators and presidents. The kings of the earth committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxuries: Prada handbags and Armani suits, Mikimoto pearls and Veuve Clicquot champagnes, endless shiny Apple devices like the one I'm using right now, and all the rest of it. All who have drunk Lady Babylon's wine have been corrupted by her deceptions. And, very obviously, the more you drink, the less you can resist her. The more you drink, the more numb you become towards God. But very clearly here, she will not intoxicate and seduce forever. There's a deadline, and all who love her are doomed to fall with her. There's a famous poem by Percy Shelley. This was written in 1818, and perhaps you know it. The poem begins like this. "I met a traveller from an antique land who said, 'Two vast and trunkless legs of stones stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk,'" and with apologies to Shelley, we'll abbreviate the poem here, "half sunk in the sand lies the shattered head of this great statue." And then the sonnet ends like this. "And on the pedestal, these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, Boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. What happened to proud Ozymandias in Shelley's parable will surely happen, this vision tells us, to proud Lady Babylon. What happened to Ozymandias in the poem will surely happen to all those earthly empires, proud empires, set up in defiance against God. Doom is at hand. Now another voice echoes from heaven, and if you do just a little bit of homework to ask whose voice is this, you fairly quickly realise this must be the voice of the Lamb once slain. This is the voice of the risen Lord Jesus himself. This is the voice of Jesus from the throne room. And are his beloved people, whom he personally died to redeem, are they tempted to compromise with Lady Babylon? Verse 4, I heard another voice from heaven say, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues, for her sins are piled up to heaven, and God has remembered her crimes." The awful truth is, if you are led by Lady Babylon, her sins are not just an occasional stuff-up, because nobody's perfect. Her sins are the basic inclination of her heart all the time. Every act is tarnished. Every decision is stained. Picture it this way, if Lady Babylon is dressed in rich purple, well then, for those who adore her, every moment of every day is coloured purple. And Jesus summons us. Don't swallow her deceptions. Don't be seduced by her. Don't admire her, even behind closed doors. Don't drink what she offers. Don't enjoy her fellowship. Don't belong to her. Don't be destroyed with her. Don't envy those who love her. I've saved you from all of that. Flee her. Flee from her, because it's ominous, isn't it? At the end of verse 5, God has remembered her. For her greed and pride, perfect justice lies ahead. It turns out that some sins require double payment, because that's their true cost. And so, risen and reigning, the Lord Jesus says, give back to her as she has given. Pay her back double for what she has done. Mix her a double portion from her own cup. Give her as much torture and grief as the glory and luxury she gave herself. In her heart she boasts, I sit as queen. I'm not a widow. I will never mourn. Therefore in one day her plagues will overtake her, death, mourning and famine. She will be consumed by fire, for mighty is the Lord God who judges her. There are so many earthly empires which are set up to dethrone Jesus. Nations, families, great businesses and brands, sometimes entire religions are set up to dethrone Jesus. All are doomed to fall. God's retribution is irresistible. And when it comes, fearfully rapid. And Jesus says, don't be caught with the wrong team. It is a dreadful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. Her pride, her self-weaning pride and her greed will be no more. And the instruction to us is, flee from her. Do not love what she loves, do not drink what she drinks, do not be seduced by her promises of comfort and luxury. This is the voice of the Lamb once slain. Flee her tentacles, flee her web, flee her snares, flee. Come out from her. Now let's do a little thought experiment together. If we hop off the train and head in for a group wander through the QVB and then down into those tunnel arcades and up into the Pitt Street Mall and into some of the lovely arcades then and beyond, we can window shop for hours. We can window shop for endless, elegant luxuries. We can shop for Zara heels and Zimmermann swimsuits and L'Occitane creams and Sephora skincare. We can go hunting for Dior perfumes and Rolex watches, Simon Carter cufflinks, R.M. Williams boots, Royal Albert tea sets, Rydell glassware, T2 teas, Sennheiser headphones, Leica cameras, Kiki K stationery, Rubik's cubes. All the beautiful things that human craftsmanship and commerce can possibly supply. You can find it all there. Now hold that thought and ponder this. There's been a constant smoke haze this past week, and we cope because we know it's for our good. We know it's for our protection from summer bushfires. But how did it feel last month when, instead of a smoke haze for protection, when there was that terrible smoke pillar rising over the historic and beautiful town of Lahaina in Western Maui? I've been there. I've enjoyed Lahaina. It's shattering. As the entire town was suddenly and shockingly incinerated, that's a moment of utter devastation. And so now imagine that our smoke was not to protect us against bushfires, but imagine instead that it was Sydney's version of the Great Fire of Rome in 1864, or Sydney's version of the Great Fire of London in 1666. Or Sydney's version of the Great Fire of Chicago in 1871. If this were that kind of smoke, we would be in deep mourning. All that wealth lost. All that labour lost. All that beauty turned to ash and perished. Though even amid such tragedy, I suspect our city still would have hardened hearts and would not mourn over sin, even then. In this vision, as Lady Babylon is consumed by fire, we hear lengthy laments, first from the kings of the earth, then from the merchants, then from those who trade upon her seas, and their heartache is haunting. Let's dip in at a couple of points. Verse 9, when the kings of the earth who committed adultery with her and shared her luxury see the smoke of her burning, they will weep and mourn over her. Terrified at her torment, they will stand far off and cry, "Woe, woe, O great city, O Babylon, city of power! In 1 hour your doom has come." Verse 15, the merchants who sold these things and gained their wealth from her will stand far off, terrified at her torment. They will weep and mourn and cry out, "Woe, woe, O great city, dressed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and glittering with gold, precious stones and pearls. In 1 hour Such great wealth has been brought to ruin. And then there's the seafarers and the sea traders. Verse 18, when they see the smoke of her burning, they will exclaim, was there ever a city like this great city? They will throw dust on their heads and with weeping and mourning cry out, woe, woe, O great city, where all who had ships on the sea became rich through her wealth. In 1 hour she has been brought to ruin. O Lady Babylon, we thought so highly of you. O Lady Babylon, we admired you, we loved you, we drank your wine, we devoted ourselves to you. All that beauty lost. All that wealth and labour turned to ash. Obviously, they're grieving for this great power behind all the earthly empires. They're also grieving for themselves. But notice, they never lament over sin, which I think demonstrates how terrible spiritual blindness is. They're so blind that they're blind to their blindness. Even in judgment, their hearts remain hard towards God. When I was a young fellow growing up in Papua New Guinea, when someone died, a Papua New Guinean, the women of their village would wail. That's their traditional way of mourning. And I can still hear it in my memories, echoing across the valley through the night, wailing, mourning, moaning, lamenting, grieving. I think that's the tone of these laments. All is lost. Such wealth is lost. Such beauty is lost. Such labour, it's all gone. If this city falls, who can stand? Well, the answer from chapter 17 is the called, chosen and faithful followers of Christ. There is someone who stands. And now as we head towards the end of chapter 18, a mighty angel demonstrates symbolically the terrible finality of what will certainly befall Babylon the Great. Notice in verse 22, the sound of music, not just the old movie, the sound of music is gone. The joys of fine craftsmanship will be gone. The production of food will be gone. Verse 23, even the shining of lamps will be gone, and the sound of weddings will be gone. Verse 21, then a mighty angel picked up a boulder the size of a large millstone and threw it into the sea and said, with such violence, the great city of Babylon will be thrown down, never to be found again. The music of harpists and musicians, flautists and trumpeters will never be heard in you again. No workman of any trade will ever be found in you again. The sound of a millstone will never be heard in you again. The light of a lamp will never shine in you again. The voice of bridegroom and bride will never be heard in you again. And why? Because, verse 23, you were the self-appointed prelates. Your dark arts deceived the nations. Verse 24, you were responsible for the blood of my people. I don't think I've ever quite felt what these laments lead me to feel. Or I don't think I've ever quite felt it as I did until I landed in these laments and meditated on them at length. There's such awful, awful heartache. We can put names to it even. There's such awful heartache as Google and BHP and Trump Tower and the London Symphony Orchestra and our own iconic Harbour Bridge all fall. Unlike fictional worlds, if you know the Lord of the Rings, when Mordor falls, there's no lament. Unlike fictional worlds, the heart of evil is so deceptively and devastatingly intertwined with so much that we admire and love and even strive for. So much that seems so good and so beautiful and so desirable is also so corrupted and tangled up, inextricably entangled with evil. If God is to eradicate evil so that the world can be made new, and that's where the great vision is heading in chapters 19, 20, 21 and 22. Gee, I'm looking forward to getting there, starting in 2 weeks' time. If God is to eradicate evil so that the world can be made new, so much that we now admire is doomed to fall. And notice in verse 10, it happens in 1 hour. In verse 17, 1 hour. In verse 19, in 1 hour. This heart of human evil will be ended virtually instantaneously. God's judgment is inescapable, irresistible, virtually instant, and totally just. Again, God's judgment is inescapable, irresistible, virtually instant, and totally just. It is a terrible thing to fall into the hands of the living God. Now, in this life, there is very little justice. Despite our best efforts, there's very little in the way of justice. And part of the glory here is that in the end, when Jesus comes to judge, justice will be perfect at long last. And the way these visions fit together is that for God to dwell forever with his people in a pristine and totally renewed creation, and gee, I am looking forward to the rest of Revelation. For God to dwell forever with his people in a pristine and totally renewed creation, evil must be eradicated. And so we are enjoined, rejoice. And obviously in 2 weeks' time, that's where chapter 19 is going to carry us. But it's here already in verse 20. Rejoice, O heaven. Rejoice, saints and apostles and prophets. God has treated Lady Babylon for the way she treated you. And so, brothers and sisters, do not overinvest your hearts in the here and now. Do not overinvest your hearts in the here and now. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. We live here as exiles. This is not our true and final home. When I ask, what sparks true joy? Actually, it's that Jesus will not be, he will not be dethroned. He cannot be dethroned. That's true joy. And justice is coming. And beyond that, a pristine new creation with evil completely disentangled and eradicated, and God himself dwelling with us. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I've asked this question before, and doubtless I will ask it again. There are different forms of this question. Here's how I'll ask it today. If the castle is burning down, and you know the only safe route out, do you just leave everyone else to choose whichever pathway they wish?